turn lane.
It is.
Yeah.
Can you? It is 4 o'clock. I know. Hey, did you read everything for class tonight? I'm glad somebody fears me, because apparently the 11 o'clock class doesn't. So, because none of them are here. They have extra credit to come, but they're not here.
Hey, really?
Oh, your students.
Yes. All right.
Young person getting out.
Oh, well, okay, maybe we'll hope. So, before we get started, do we have enough for a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good, because otherwise we'd be a non-starter.
Yes, with 9 members, we have to have at least 5.
Good, all right. All right, well, then in that case, I can call this meeting to order. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review the packet, including the minutes. Are there any comments or questions or concerns, corrections for the minutes? I'd just say that was a long meeting, and Cece, thank you for getting it all in there. In that case, do I hear a motion on the approval of the minutes?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Can I get a second?
I'll second them.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right. Okay, so we're to our regular agenda, COA 2024.
All right. So this item, COA 2024-001, the applicant, excuse me, it's Mr. Mike Solis, who's a representative from the company. You'll notice on here there's not an actual address because this encompasses quite a few lots and blocks throughout the Washington Square Historic District. But they are requesting to bore and install permanent fiber optic lines and utility boxes in the attached map. So we'll go to the map real fast on here. Of course, this is like a lot of utility lines, a little bit harder to see. This is the part that I think will be most applicable to this committee. So they are proposing to put in fiber optic lines that would run 6 inches off the edge of the sidewalk, curbs, and existing poles, right along existing city utility lines like our water, sewer, things like that. And also to install 5 permanent utility boxes that are flush to the ground, not the tall standing ones, but the ones that you see flush mounted to the ground. The example one, Mr. Solis wanted me to tell y'all, was put in before he realized this was in a historic district. So he did want me to pass on his apologies. Did not realize they were at the corner of a historic district when they installed one of these boxes. So one is in place, the other 4 are not. He was very apologetic on the
Are
phone.
they gonna take that down?
Which one?
The one that's, the one that has the bollard?
So the one that has the bollard, I don't know if, I'd have to go look at that one. This one that I'm in the example is the one that he was referencing. Which one has the bollard?
There's several.
I can go look. But this is just in reference to the 5 that are on this map.
And who is this fiber optic company?
Oh my goodness, let me go look.
Is it Vexus? They're the ones that did the bollards.
I don't-
AT&T put flush mounts.
I don't know if this is Vexus or not. I can go back and double check. It's not.
Okay.
Thank you, Army. I'll
Thank
say-
you.
I did not think it was.
Okay, good. I feel
What
better.
did he say?
It is not
It's
Vexus.
not Vexus.
Okay.
They're the ones that subcontract did a lot of damage
Okay.
to city infrastructure.
Yes, so this is utility lines on this map. You can see there are 5 permanent boxes wanting to be put in. Like I said, one of the 5 is already there, so you're approving or not approving 4. And the items that apply to this are B, C, I, and K. I will mention Washington Square is a state archaeological landmark as of 1992. I did advise Mr. Solis that this may fall under the Section 106 review, but that is through the state. So from our local standpoint, we can advise them to go to THC to see if it needs a Section 106 review. But at that point, unless THC brings it back to us, that kind of ends our purview. So I did advise him of that and put him in touch with the correct people at THC, but our purview kind of ends there. And I'm happy to answer any questions if y'all have any after public comment.
Okay, yes, so thank you for that reminder. So at this point, we will open it for public comment, should anybody need to comment. If so, come forward and state your name for the record, please, and you get 3 minutes.
It'll take 3 minutes. Ralph LaRue, Nacogdoches ISD. That company that you mentioned is working for the school district, installing our fiber between each campus so that we can get it off of the utility poles and underground.
Okay. All right, so, all right.
I answer any questions.
I have a question.
Certainly.
If they do any damage to our city infrastructure, who's liable?
They are.
Okay,
And they
good to
will
know.
repair
Thank
it.
you. Just want to make sure that's taken care of.
Any other questions for Mr. LaRue?
No,
We
you.
appreciate you being here.
thank you.
I actually have a question for staff, just because I saw this and went, oh, so all of the other road work that goes off the road right now, which I know isn't before us, but hasn't come before us. How did that not come before us?
As far as road work that the city is doing?
Yes.
So technically, the city does not have to come before HLPC since you are a city-appointed board.
Right.
We ask them to, out of courtesy. It doesn't always work like that. So that work has not come before y'all just because the city is not beholden to HLPC.
Right, okay. I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because this is kind of right in the midst of all of that.
Absolutely, and we do have a new Public Works manager, Case Opperman. He and I are in contact a lot, so he and I are working through some workflows. We are both, picking up projects that our predecessors left off, so we will be talking about some of those workflows to see if we can bring some stuff before y'all, just to make sure we have transparency with the community.
Right, I guess that was my concern, is let's make sure, since we're really talking archaeological here, I can ask you, or otherwise maybe we have Mr. LaRue come back. I guess my concern is there anybody looking, I mean, we're talking 6 inches off of disturbed soil, but is there anybody keeping an eye out should anything be disturbed, since we're looking at archaeological? Is there anybody on the crew that is assigned keep an eye out for the historic sherd?
Maybe a question for Mr. LaRue?
Because that would, of course, need to go to
Are you referencing the NISD project or the city?
NISD. Obviously, the city needs to deal with that on its own, but in this case, the fiber
Yes.
optic cable.
Again, Ralph LaRue, NACDOS ISD, and yes, we advised Mike that he should, now, he only digs holes
Right,
at the end of his runs. Everything else is directional drilling under, it's 6 inches off the sidewalk, but it's
But-
not scratched along
Yeah.
the sidewalk, it's
Oh, good.
drilled under the ground.
Oh.
So that, he's only got where these 5 holes are, the 5 boxes are, is the only digging he does, and it's just big enough for the box to go into. But he's been advised that should there be a trinket or a whatever, just something unusual, he spends a lot of time in dirt, so he knows when there's something brought up that's not, not kosher or different, so.
and so, but there is, so he's aware of that,
He
and
used to
that there is a
call- he used to
process
call
called,
me,
all right. Because I think that whole collection is at SFA, so,
Well.
Okay, just making sure
It's
should
the
something-
THC's job to make sure you guys do that, so it's not ours, so.
well,
but
yeah,
it's-
but no,
it's
it is,
important.
it is,
Yes, I
we do not
grant.
have archaeological under our ordinance.
That's
So-
true.
So disturbing
true.
archaeological, yeah. So, okay, just, that was my question on that, just to ensure that somebody's
So these
looking.
temporary pits, these are to run the things so they can,
right, get the
even though
drilling
they're not gonna
rig.
put it,
Yeah, they would,
even though they won't have a box there. Well, that's interesting, that's good to know. I'm glad, I had in my mind they were gonna be digging up the whole thing.
No, it's that directional drilling, which is
Love
an
it.
amazing process to watch.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
Cool,
thank you.
yes, thank you.
And I will mention one more thing on the archaeological portion. NISD and also Mr. Curtis, Army Curtis, who's the architect on this whole project, have worked very closely with SFA in the past. They've had Dr. George Avery out in the past if there's something interesting that is found. So they have had that relationship, and they also know who the contact is over at SFA if there is something that's dug up that we really hope there's not.
Right, but we're just making sure.
Just making sure.
Any other questions of staff on this? Any discussion, or do we have a motion? Or, I can make a motion, I don't get to make them that often. I'll make a motion that we approve COA 2024-001, our first one for the year. That it is in compliance with City Ordinance B, C, I, and K.
I second the motion.
There you go.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Next.
Excuse me. Our next item is COA 2024-002. This applicant is Mr. Army Curtis, and the location is 411 North Mountain Street, which is the entire location of essentially Thomas J. Rusk Elementary campus. We kind of use that address to encompass the entire campus. The applicant is requesting repaving of all existing parking lots and driveways, installation of a new parking lot, drainage improvements, and utility improvements, which kind of reference our case before this. So this is driveways, parking lots, several walkways, which are all indicated in your map, right here. You can see the parking lot that is kind of gray shaded is the only new parking lot that would be paved. It's right near the old university building and right off an existing parking lot. From what we can tell even by driving past, it's kind of used as a parking lot a lot of times. So there's that area would be the only new addition to this. Everything else would be repaving of existing paved areas. And of course, it's essentially under staff comments is the same information as the previous application as far as, this is a state archaeological landmark. We've mentioned to Mr. Curtis and Mr. LaRue, this may do a section 106, but probably not since these are already paved areas, so it's already disturbed ground. It's nothing that at least I don't anticipate THC would want to look at. And from the staff side of things, we find that ordinance criteria B, C, I, and K relate to this proposed construction. And I'm happy to answer any comments you have after public comment.
All right, so we are now opening, I guess I hadn't officially closed before, but
You don't
yeah,
have to open and close public comment, just for a
Just
public hearing.
public
Turns
hearing.
out.
So I don't have to open or close, but I do have to state they can come before us. All right, so if anybody shall like to speak, you may come up. 3 minutes. Okay. Okay.
Afternoon, Army Curtis, with Curtis Architecture. What we wanted to do is kind of highlight what the scope of work is out here. All of the pavements, the asphalt pavements of the parking lots and drive aisles, not only for the student drop-off areas in the back of the building, but also the food services parking lot and the lot that's on the side of Bell Gym and kind of behind what we call the cop shop, the ISD police building. Those are all being repaved with asphalt again. They'll be restriped, and in addition to that, all of the kind of asphalted areas that are in the courtyard of the TJR building, including the strip of where the kids are actually picked up, so the curb that will all be taken out, redone in concrete. There will be architectural joints placement in all of that, as well as 2 planters that are put in front of the courtyards. And then there'll also be an architectural screen wall put up in front of the portables that are sitting in the courtyard. The school didn't want to give up the portables, but we're trying to do basically a beautification back there because this is the main point of contact that students have, and parents for that matter, for the school.
2 questions. How many accessible spots will there be? I don't know if you know that, but most of us in the Federation are really old, and most of them are driving cars with handicap.
Yeah, so there are some accessible spots right now across from the old university building. The new parking lot will have 2 new accessible spots into it.
Only 2? And then is that limited by?
That's
code?
limited by the number of parking spots in that area.
Can it be that much, no matter if we need more?
It can be over that. That is the minimum requirement for those areas.
So that was a discussion we had at Federation meeting. Perky, you were there, weren't you?
I think I had to leave by that point.
Okay, well, we had a big discussion about that because, I mean, of our board members, probably 5 of them are on walkers or wheelchairs and need accessible parking. And that's Federation, the board. So, I think they'd be very interested in having a discussion with you. I don't know if enough discussion has been had with them, but I think you ought to have a discussion with Ann Wilson, our
Sure.
president.
And I think it would be fair to say that lot is kind of dedicated to the OUB.
That's what I was told.
Correct.
Fully handicapped accessible.
So,
And Charles and I had a discussion, Jeff, I don't know, we talked about possibly permeable rather than asphalt, just for drainage and just for beautification. If we could do the brick pavers to match the building, that would have been stunning.
yeah, it would have been.
Would have been, but it's a budget thing, is that
It's
it?
definitely a budget thing here.
What a shame
There
we
is
gotta
a
raise the money.
drainage, there are drainage improvements kind of sprinkled throughout the scope as well, because they do have some localized flooding across some of the walkways there. So that's all being taken care of as part of this as well. That parking lot, I'd say could easily be transitioned to include more handicap spots. We would lose parking too, doing at the same time, because you still have to comply with the drive aisle requirement. The new sidewalk that we're putting in is meant to be kind of flush up to the parking lot. So you would have direct access, you know, and basically have a pathway going back to their new revised path going into the building.
And that's the accessible, I mean, I
Correct.
personally park on the backside, but you know, those people they
Yes.
park in the front.
But the new ramp and everything that was built for the OUB?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
what that
that's
is.
what this lot is kind of directly impacting.
And that's why I'm saying more accessible there would be wise.
Yeah, and I'm saying we can do that. There's nothing that prevents that. The amount of parking that we're showing is kind of limited otherwise, but if we're willing to give up 2 more spots, we can add, you know, 4 more parking spots,
Well,
dedicated.
After a while, though, it becomes a concern from the view of people seeing that building. It's just a big parking lot in front of this historic building, so there's a balance that
Sure.
I don't want to ask you to come down exactly how many parking spaces are handicapped here. But one thing is, you know, that's how people see that building. And if there's a great big parking lot there, that would just be unfortunate. So, anyway, that's something to consider.
And that's one of the reasons I think we limited it to what it was.
Yes.
You notice that it's not a double-sided parking lot. It's a single drive aisle facing spots directly up to the building, kind of in the spirit of trying to be able to be as close to the building as you can for spots like that. I think that it's kind of sitting up a little bit off of the street, so it's, you know, it's not like
Yeah,
you're
you gotta see
looking directly onto a lot per se. So I think we're trying to understand to take a minimal approach but also give the amenity there that the building kind of lacks right now and quite frankly fights against the traffic of the school on the other side of the OUB.
Well, that was what we were thinking about aesthetically, pavers.
Well,
That's the main view from Mound Street of the OUB.
Well, the pavers won't be seen from Mound Street because they're on the ground, but just as far as, I appreciate your not putting a great big grand parking lot there.
Oh, sure, right.
Because that is how people see that building. So,
I did have one clarification question. Can you see the map
Yes.
here? So in the bottom right, I just want to make sure, because I wasn't sure if that was an arrow when I was reviewing this, that the bottom right-hand corner that says repaved driveway and parking lot, that's referring to that east-west strip there. Okay, it's not that spot. There is an arrow. I just couldn't tell on my bad print. Okay.
Yes, and in fact, that particular lot is being restriped for the parking spaces to turn around, because this has kind of become a one-way traffic pattern now through this area. So that you go in there now and you feel like you're backwards, and so this corrects that.
I just want to make sure I was
So our
understanding the
docent-
approval of the right location.
It's not on the
Yes.
practice field.
Docent
Yes.
parking's right here. So if this is one way, then I have to go all the way around here to get to it? Too bad. She can go this way.
people have been
now.
doing that for decades.
This is how I go. I'm there now.
Okay.
I had, yeah, okay.
Any other questions
Yeah,
for
I had
Mr.
a
Cruz?
question just about sidewalks too. I mean, I know that there's this one driveway here that if you're going down the sidewalk, it's all crumbly, and if you're in a wheelchair, you have to go really slow, not fall in a hole. I mean, we're in effect, I'm sure you'll fix all that up. It'll be.
So that, where exactly are you
When
looking
you go
at?
down Fredonia Street, the
Oh, that
back in
part.
there, and there's a driveway that comes out, and it's all super crumbly around there.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking at,
Smooth.
areas where the drive comes back out to the street.
Right.
And there's there's a lot of curbs that will be redone
Okay.
in this as well.
Yeah.
And so we will pay attention to those transitions back
Okay,
into the
but
street.
it's not like you'll do the driveway, but don't touch the sidewalk because it's a
Right.
city thing. It'll just all,
And as another example of that, in the lower right-hand corner here, where that other parking lot we were just talking about, those curb ramps are also being redone because we're widening that driveway a little bit
Yeah.
to facilitate traffic. So those curb ramps will also be done.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Marty.
answering way above and beyond questions. All right, any other comments from staff on that?
No, ma'am.
Or clarification? Okay. So, do we, any other discussion amongst you all? All right, well, I'm on a roll.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we approve 2024-002 with regards to criteria B, C, I, and K, that they're also keeping an eye out for anything disturbed that pops up. And we approve this application. Do we have a,
I second the motion.
there we go, all right. Last discussion? All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next one.
So our next item, COA 2024-003, this is for 402 East Main Street. The applicant is Alex Shaw. She came before this board probably about 6 months ago, putting in a new business over on Church Street. She's actually opening a new business on East Main now, which is very exciting. She is requesting to repaint the wood trim around the doors and windows on the front facade of her building, do an 11 by 17 wood or wood composite awning sign under the awning where there was previously a sign there, and then replace several pieces of rotten wood with matching wood. It's mainly around a few windows that have leaked and held a little bit of water, so she's wanting to do the same trim around it. And like I mentioned, the awning sign is replacing a previous awning sign for the business that was there before her. This building is contributing to the Downtown Historic District. I don't have an exact build date, but it's on the 1912 Sanborn Fire Map as a one-story brick structure with a frame awning, and it was a hay and feed store, at least in 1912. And so here's and it also, from the staff side, B, C, F, and G, and our sign ordinance, which is chapter 10, apply to this request. And here are some pictures. This is the wood around the door and the windows. In our historic site survey that was done several years ago, these were bright red. They are white now, and she's requesting to go to some sort of blue aquamarine color. But all of this has been painted many times over. And this is also the area that has a little bit of rotten wood that she's wanting to replace, and then this awning sign would go right kind of in the middle of where her door is. And of course, here is the location, if you're not familiar, kind of catty corner across from that Mound and Main parking lot. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have after public comment.
So we are now open for public comment. Should anybody? Going. All right, I have a question. And I'm not gonna assume. 11 by 17, inches, feet, or combination?
Inches.
Thank you.
I should have specified that. It is inches. Our planning department would have caught that too, because there is some formula where it can only take up so much, and you have to have so much headroom, but it is 11 by 17 inches.
Perfect. Other questions for staff? All right. Not hearing any motions?
Yes, I'm make a motion, we approve COA 2024-003 on the basis of B, C, F, and G.
I second it.
All right, any discussion? All right. And in that case, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next.
So this item is not attached to any COAs or anything like that. This is purely a discussion item. So our city attorney, Mr. Jerry Baker, who's here as well, if you have any questions of him. I don't think you knew that was gonna happen. So this is an update to our historic preservation ordinance, which is chapter 50 in our city ordinances. Essentially, this is just codifying our administrative approval process and what the historic preservation officer already does. So essentially, we're putting in code how we are currently operating. So in the attachment that's in your packet, everything in red is an addition. Everything in black was already there, so there are no changes to it. A few of the things I will call to your attention, there, you can see in section 50-31 under ordinary maintenance, we marked out, included in this definition of ordinary maintenance, because that references back to a different part of the ordinance, and we don't actually line out what ordinary maintenance is. So that's why you now have a B that talks about what ordinary maintenance is. So we have that in here. Also, this does not give any extra powers to me as your historic preservation officer. We actually put a little bit more back on HLPC with this ordinance update, because in that ordinary maintenance, you know, if it's something like peeling paint and replacing one color for the same color, that's ordinary maintenance. If we are going from a solid color to maybe a wall that now has a mural on it, that has a big advertisement, that changes the overall look of the building, so that I would be bringing before HLPC from now on. So it's a little bit of a change, actually gives a little bit more work to y'all, which I hope no one's scared of, but does not give any extra powers to your historic preservation officer. Also under application.
Can I ask a question to
yes.
clarify right there?
Yes.
So you said same color, same color. Somebody has pink, they want to paint it blue. We're not talking that, we're talking features.
And that kind of is up to interpretation.
Okay.
So on, and Jerry may want to pop in and answer some of this. And so for the most part, I will be bringing changing colors to HLPC. If it's something after, 6 months, this becomes, very difficult, and there is a recommendation that, this is too much for the owners to deal with, something city council hears about from everybody in their wards, there may be an option for change. As of right now, we will be bringing as much forth as possible to HLPC to make sure that the power stays with people appointed by city council rather than just staff doing whatever I feel like. Even though I
I have a
hope.
question on that. We don't have a paint palette, so why
We do
would
not.
wouldn't that be, it just doesn't seem like, why would we do it if we don't have a approved paint palette?
So it's not so much approving the paint color, it's approving, is this changing the overall look and character of your historic building? And so we still have our same standards. It does not change the Secretary of Interior standards. It's more, do I feel like changing the color is appropriate historically, not do I like pink versus purple? So you still have the same standards to gauge it by, it's just we're bringing more to you to look at those standards against.
And you're saying if we, in 6 months, go, all we're listening to is paint, we can toss paint.
And that, well, that may be something we bring back to our city attorney, to city council, and say, this has become cumbersome, it's become difficult on property owners, we're getting a ton of complaints that we are holding up processes. That's something we can definitely keep in that discussion. Right now, this is just what we feel is best to bring to HLPC, to make sure all of our bases are covered, to make sure that everybody is being treated fairly on the same playing field, and the same items are being looked at, no matter if you are in one district versus another.
Because I'm sitting here thinking about best practices as promulgated by the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, which is just paint color is not the, now mural versus a regular wall are two different features, but that NAPC strongly says, by experience all over the country with multiple lawsuits and things, is paint color isn't what you should be doing.
And I
So,
guess
but we can experiment.
my reasoning is that if we tell people, and I try to encourage people about, they don't wanna get their houses on the overlay or listed in the registry, because they're so, well, I don't want anybody to tell me what color to paint. We don't have a paint palette. So once we then say, oh, they have to come here, that's sorta,
Well, we're not saying that. She's saying there's within certain criteria, if it looks like you're gonna change the look of that building by the paint, then it will come here. But that seems perfectly reasonable. Now, if you just paint it in slightly different shade, it's just pure maintenance. Isn't that not what you're saying?
Do you wanna pop in on this, Jerry?
I'm not saying that either.
Okay, in case I'm not.
that's what I'm saying, let it go to
now,
her
That is.
to expedite it. It shouldn't come to us. She said it should.
Good afternoon. Jerry Baker, City Attorney. Thanks for having me here. Just to clarify, all we're doing is really delegating what's going to be approved administratively versus approved by the committee, and making that clear. And so right now, there's really no language in the ordinance itself that specifies what the historical preservation officer has been doing. So we just want to make that clear as possible. So, we're trying to say, if it's the same, gray for gray, black for black, she can approve that herself. Otherwise, just gonna bring it to you guys. We'll check it out. We're not saying that the committee is gonna say, you're painting it pink. We're not gonna allow that. We're saying that that just needs to come to the committee for that COA to be approved. That's all it's saying.
All right.
Thank you, Jerry.
And you're the officer, right?
I am the Historic Preservation Officer, in case I didn't mention that, it's me.
That was one thing.
It's me. Also down here in section 50-158, we also did a little clarification that those COA applications come to the Historic Preservation Officer, not to you as a committee until I look through them. We also mentioned in here that until the application is deemed complete by your Historic Preservation Officer, it doesn't come before HLPC. That's not saying whether or not I like the application, agree with it, anything like that, but basically has all the things that are listed in here. Like, I need to make sure the owner has signed off on this before y'all approve something that an applicant wants and the owner says, why did you let them paint my building? We don't want anyone to get into something like that. So essentially, once they have the proposed work, some pictures, drawings, all the contact information, owner's signature, then I bring it before HLPC.
And I know in years, that's good, because I know in years past, it would be, long time ago, incomplete applications, which really wasted everybody's time, so.
It usually leads to either denials or tabling, and then we have to come back the next month
Yeah.
anyway. And most of the people, honestly, in our historic districts have lived there for quite a long time or owned these buildings for a long time. And so most of them come with a complete packet, and they're like, I'm ready to go, I know what you need. So it's pretty easy. Our new owners, we do usually walk them through what our application looks like, what they're gonna need before they even start filling it out, just so it's a little bit easier on them to make sure they have all the information, they know who their building owner is, and they can go get their landlord's signature, things like that. Also in here, let's see. Also in section 50-160, we also have timelines in here as far as when I receive it. If it's an administrative approval, we'll approve it within 10 days. Mr. Baker and I did chat, we're gonna do it to 15 days, in case I ever take a vacation, and I'm not here for 10 days
Well,
straight.
or you get the Christmas to New Year's.
Christmas to New
there,
Year's, things
yeah.
like that.
That's fine.
Absolutely. So we're
Okay,
gonna-
so we can just write 15 then.
Yes, yeah, and if I didn't, I don't think I mentioned this up front. This is for discussion, and then, of course, this will actually be approved or denied, by city council. So if y'all have any
Yeah.
questions, concerns, anything like that, we can certainly
Yeah.
pass that along. Mr. Baker and I can work through some of those things, but this is ultimately approved by city council, not HLPC, because you can't approve your own ordinances. So we have that in here. And then a few things in here are just, clarifying if the applicant goes to the committee or comes to the historic preservation officer first, and things of that nature. And so I'm happy to pass on any questions, concerns, anything you think needs to be added, taken out of this, and before we go to city council.
Can I ask Mr. Baker? Jessica just mentioned it a while ago, and I've thought it needs to be clear that our ordinance, the city ordinance, doesn't necessarily apply to county property. And it seems like over the years, they've periodically, these different governmental, and they would apply to NISD as well. They necessarily don't have to abide by ordinance, but has been a courtesy.
Correct.
Am I understanding that right?
I think that's correct interpretation. There is some case law out there, and I'll tell you, it's kind of mixed, because Jessica brought this question up to me earlier today, and I was
Yeah.
kind of looking into it. So, when it talks about zoning, the city has, significant powers when it comes to zoning.
That's right.
However, there's some case law out there that says that, like a school district that wants to put an extension into a residential area, would they be permitted to do so? And so, but the AG has come back and said certain ordinances that, have to do with, specifically historic districts may be, as long as it's quote unquote reasonable, kind of regulation, that they'll be upheld. And so, like I said, I wish I could give you a black and white answer. I'm just afraid that there's not one. I think it's gonna come down to the facts of the actual case, the issue, and depending on whether there's determination of, can we enforce this reasonably? And if so, I think we'll have a better shot of enforcing that. If not, then probably not. So it's really gonna be a factual issue, to be honest with you.
Thank
I
you.
know that really didn't answer your
Well,
question, but
it did, actually.
unfortunately.
It did answer my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any of this? Anything else about any of the changes that are being proposed with the ordinance? Okay,
But most of this, as you said, is clarifying what's been happening for years.
That's right.
correct. Correct. Okay.
And I will mention, as far as the NISD and city and county and all working together, we are very lucky that our school system, county, city, all of us work very closely together, and we have entities that really do want to do the right thing when it's historic districts, so I very much appreciate their cooperation in all this. Because there's always a chance when you have multiple government organizations of things turning ugly, and knock on wood, we have very great people in place, and everybody has worked very well together.
So what do you need from us going forward with this? I mean, obviously, we don't,
Be
approve it.
informed.
Yeah, you don't approve or anything like that, just any feedback, and it can even be a group head nod, or I have no issues with this, I'm good with it going forward to city council. It doesn't need to be a vote or anything like that, just, if you have any questions, concerns, or anything you would like us to take another look at, we can go back and do that.
So, I guess at this moment, anybody have anything for staff? No, you're the one that's gonna have to deal with most of it, so
Yeah.
I hope you're happy with it.
Yeah, and thanks for
Okay.
doing that, Mr. Baker. That's,
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these are updating ordinances that a lot of us have had boards and committees that have been established for 20-some odd years, and we have a certain way of operating, but we don't necessarily have that written in the code. So a lot of this is just covering all of our bases, making sure that we are transparent to the community on how these processes work. So we will move forward with this as city council.
All right, and last.
Our last one. Again, this is discuss, consider, and possibly appoint a subcommittee for the creation of policies and procedures for Historic Landmark Preservation Committee. At our last meeting, we talked about, in our ordinance, in our boards and commission handbook, some of the things that were outlined that were, part of HLPC's purview, and part of that was establishing policies and procedures for how this committee works. So once again, poor Mr. Baker, I've dealt with him a lot in the last month asking for advice, was how do we go about establishing our policies and procedures? So what he's supplied is a draft that is policies and procedures for the Natchitoches Zoning Board of Adjustments. You'll notice if you read through there, it's very different than HLPC. Everything they do is very different than us, but just kind of an example of what some policies and procedures for city boards could look like. We also have some examples from 2 other cities, what their HLPC policies and procedures look like. And so kind of the main sections and topics you see through a lot of these are how the meetings are run, when your public comment section is, whether it's at the very beginning of the meeting, after each item like we've been doing today, what time we start, how many people are on the committee, which a lot of these things are in our ordinances and in our boards and commission handbook. But this is just kind of a document that we can use and then hand to new board members saying, here's how your meeting's going to run. And the public can see that as well. We also usually find on their membership, it also usually talks about officer duties, how you come up with your chair and vice chair, how that's voted on, and then regular committee business as far as, outlining in a section, here's what a COA is, here's what a historic restoration grant is, demolition, things of that nature. So we talked about at the last meeting was establishing these policies and procedures to make sure we know when public comment's going to be, what type of items y'all review, how we have a chair and vice chair, and things of that nature. And so what I was kind of looking for some feedback on today is this something you want staff to draft? Looking at our zoning board of adjustments and several other examples, is this something you want staff to draft? Or you also have the option to establish a subcommittee, as long as we do not have a quorum, to kind of work through this together. Doesn't have to be at our big public meetings. They can work together, on a shared Google Doc, at Java Jack's Coffee House, however you'd like to do it, to kind of draft these things and then bring back to this committee to review a draft. So just kind of looking on some feedback on whether you want staff to take a stab at it first, or whether you'd like to do that as a subcommittee.
I know mine, I'll let you all,
Do you have an idea?
oh yeah, staff go
I do
first.
I would say staff.
you actually,
And then,
Well, I think that's reasonable. That way we'd have something to work with.
yes.
And we wouldn't sit around and try to reinvent the wheel.
Well, and because a
That
lot
would-
of this,
Yeah.
the zoning one is probably a bit more complex than we need to be, but there's some things that I think staff would be able to better explain and make sure we're at least start on track. Demolition by neglect, or some of the really sticky things.
Yeah.
And then maybe a group could review, I don't know.
And we can always,
agree.
once I have a draft, which would hopefully be in March, maybe April at the latest. Then at that point, if, as a committee, you feel like we need a lot of edits, then we can always do a subcommittee, or I can go back and do another draft, whatever y'all would like to do.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to do that. Thank you. Voluntold.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine by me. It keeps me gainfully employed. Looking through these couple examples I gave you, were there any topics that stuck out that you definitely want covered or think are very important, other than the couple main sections I mentioned?
I just think the clarification on, I think it would be good for the public if you have some, especially a new property owner, that they can see like how the process works, like what are the steps. And I guess my only concern is this could be so, lack of a better word, procedural, that it's not clear on, I think one could have a one-page bullet outline that made it really clear, but we have to go with something official. But then really being able to explain, what is a historic overlay, and the fact that there's districts versus, zoning, explaining that zoning, versus these. And the overlays, the districts versus, individual, because I know that's a question that comes up a lot. And how one gets in. Yeah, because that's a question that a lot of people don't know. But, yeah, what you have.
And there were a few examples that I really liked that had some great just tables as far as here's what a COA is, and here's how long it takes to get approved, or here's what a demolition is, here's how long it takes to come before it. And kind of had some really good tables I think are pretty user friendly. That could be something that even if someone doesn't want to read the whole thing, they can rip out page 10, and that is something on their bulletin board.
Exactly right.
So sure, I can absolutely take a stab at that, and then I'm going to strive to get it to you by March, but if not, I will have it definitely on April's agenda.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So what do you need from us? We don't need to make a motion or anything of that
Nope.
nature?
No, just directing staff to start a draft, and I will bring it back one of the next couple meetings.
Go forth.
And if we come across something that we think, yeah, be sure that's in there, we'll just email you.
Absolutely, yeah. If y'all find any examples, any charts, anything you think would be very helpful, just shoot me an email, call me, text me a link, anything like that, and I'll be happy to look at it and see if we can, see if I can incorporate it.
Oh, are the design guidelines mentioned in there? I don't remember seeing them.
So we do have our design guidelines printed. We have a link to them on our city website. And I can certainly put it in there that Nacogdoches has design guidelines, things like that, and how to find a copy or receive a printed copy. So I can,
Outdated, yeah.
And I reviewed those, and I didn't see anywhere the criteria that I gave today. I brought two.
Yes.
Yeah, I brought both the state and the national criteria. So I didn't see them anywhere, and that sort of surprised me. Perky, you know what I'm talking about? The criteria, the 5 criteria that both state commission and the national criteria.
are not listed in the design guideline.
They were not.
And that I can't really explain. The design guidelines were, I think, had them written,
Well,
I have to look on the cover, it's from like
They were
1992.
on time.
Yeah, so I can't.
Stevens about it next time I see her.
Yeah.
Saw her name on there.
Yeah, and that's something I know was brought up to discuss at a future meeting, and so we will be discussing that in March as well. I just didn't want to overburden y'all in today's meeting by talking about too many big topics. So that's what we have on this one, and I will bring that forward in March to talk about.
Perfect. I just didn't know in the packet there.
And, yeah, and I don't think we have anything that specifically references the design guidelines, but I can absolutely add that.
Yeah, I was looking through it.
And that is all I have.
That's it? All right. Barring anybody's peeps. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much. We appreciate spending your Monday afternoon here.